Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1380. The topic is nutrition and the title is All or Nothing Mindset. So I've been talking with one of my online clients, and our online client structure, like what I typically do, is we have a journal, like a Google Doc that we share, and we just call it a journal, where the person can write in whatever thoughts, questions they have. I answer the questions or kind of just talk through their thoughts. And then I'll also send nutrition reviews or training feedback. So if they sent me a video, I'd give them feedback on that. So it's basically like our communication portal, so to speak. Sometimes we still do emails and text messages and whatnot. It's at least one location that contains all the information that we discuss. And I like that for the ease of reference, especially because sometimes things come up and we want to remember, what we were doing at a certain time based on whatever. So there are times in which it helps to have that. So one of the conversations I got in recently with one of my clients was he was feeling just kind of a little kind of frustrated with himself. He's losing some motivation. He's struggling when it comes to nutrition. So I thought what I'd do is just kind of read through some of his thoughts and some of my responses, and then we'll just kind of see, what can we learn from that if we are struggling with that same issue. So he wrote, I've been lost recently and don't know what to do at times when it comes to my health. So this was after I had seen that he hadn't sent a lot of done a lot of reports, or he hadn't been logging a lot of stuff. And I was like, hey, what's up? Let me know what's going on so I can help. So that's what he wrote, and I wrote back and just said, this can be a hard place to be mentally. When I find myself in that place, I reduce the details of what I'm tracking / expecting of myself, because likely I'm burned out. And I look at other areas of my life to see if I'm overextended and need to refine or relook at what I'm doing to see if I can reduce stress. Then, I also sit down and write out the reasons I want to eat healthy and exercise regularly. And I write moments when I've been proud of myself for eating well and exercising regularly, and any times I've seen positive effects from it. So I actually do this. It sounds really corny, but I've taught myself to notice when I feel like my motivation lowering or lessening, and I just kind of feel like a little I don't want to do that. And I'm like, oh no, man, this is weird. Like you always want to do that thing. Like that's good for you. Why do you not want to do that? So that's a red flag for me. So I immediately start kind of going into this little process. So what I wrote for him was just basically some questions that I would typically kind of ask myself in a way. I wrote, what is the lowest level of tracking effort that helps you nutritionally? And what I wanted them to think through is rather than doing nothing, so if I have that all or nothing mindset, meaning I'm going to measure every food I eat, I'm going to track everything. And then you're like, well, I'm kind of tired of doing that, or I'm stressed today, or I'm just kind of burned out, so I'm going to do nothing. Well, there's probably something between all of it or none of it that we can still do. So I wanted to get him thinking of what is the lowest level of tracking effort that helps you nutritionally. Now, this answer is different for everybody. For me, I grew up paying attention to food since I was 15 years old. I started learning about food and learning more things, and this was before we had internet. So I had carried around this thick book that had the nutrition facts of every food known to man, at that time. I remember I would look up foods when I wanted to eat something. So if I wanted to eat an egg, I would look up and see okay, how many calories are in an egg, how many grams of fat, grams of carbs, and how much protein. And over time, I learned pretty much all of it. So I can count my calories throughout the day without having to track my food. Now, I'll have a rough estimate of protein. I don't really do it with carbs and fats. I don't think it's very useful. We've talked about that before. As a quick reference, you can listen to a podcast number 1021, which is a nutrition podcast titled How Much Carbs and Fats Do I Need? And you'll realize that it doesn't even matter. So you don't really need to specify a specific amount of carbs and fats per day. You just want to have your calories in order and your protein in order, and then distribute your calories and protein evenly throughout the day based on your activity level. So I basically all day just kind of count calories in my head, and that's very easy to me. It doesn't stress me out because I'm very used to it. But for this client, they wrote tracking one meal a day. So if they're burned out from tracking everything, they can at least track one meal a day. That is freaking awesome. I wrote that I like it. It's a good one. And I said, remember this when you're feeling unmotivated, down, depressed, and you think to yourself, it's okay if I pull back a little, but let me track at least one meal a day. It doesn't have to be a good meal, but if I can track one meal, that can keep me moving forward by keeping up with this healthy habit. So for him, something that's at least a minimum that he can do is to track one meal a day. That keeps him in the habit of taking the time to track, keeps him in the habit of like paying attention to measurements and serving portions, of foods. So that's a really good one. I really liked that. So this is something you can ask yourself. Whenever you feel yourself like burned out and you're in that all or nothing mindset where if I can't do it all, I'm going to do nothing. Well, what's the minimum that you can still do? What's something that you can do that is some level of attention to your nutrition, but it's very minimal, and even on your worst days you can do it? The next thing I asked him was what is the lowest level of tracking effort that helps you training-wise? So the first one was nutrition, this one's training. And he wrote, this is where I get into trouble. I have the all or nothing mindset. Either I'm going to do the workouts as intended or not do them at all. I have all this experience internalized, but still choose to fall for the perfectionist mindset. I try my best to stay consistent, and even when I'm doing my workouts, that negative thought is lingering in my head, and once I feel a little bad or a lack of energy, then a door opens up for the negativity, and I fall into the situation I am in now. I love his awareness. It's incredible self-awareness. But that's basically what he's struggling with is if I can't do the workout perfectly, I might as well not even do it at all. So I wrote back, it is a struggle when you look at what was possible versus what you're able to do that day. But instead of comparing to what's best, compare to what's worst. And what's worst is doing nothing. Anything is good compared to nothing. So whether I do one squat, one push-up, one sit-up, it was better than nothing. So instead of comparing to perfect, compare to the worst. And stay above the worst is what can help you still put in some effort and continue to move forward. So when he's looking at it's either all or nothing, all he's focusing on is the all. It needs to be all. It needs to be all. It needs to be all. What we really should focus on, it needs to be not nothing. It needs to be not nothing. You just have to do not nothing. As long as I don't do not nothing, so I can move forward and I can still have a degree of success that day. Whether we're successful today isn't I did the best possible thing that could have ever been possible for me to do. And that be the only marker of success. It's impossible. It's insanely ridiculous. Never going to happen. And it's not even necessary. There is no one in the world, literally no one in the world that we would deem successful that has had a perfect day every day of the process of them becoming successful. No one. Literally no one. Not even professional athletes where they get paid to do whatever their goal is and they have no other concern in the world, which I'm sure what everybody thinks, which is not true in any way whatsoever. Even they have like hurdles they have to jump through and things they have to do that doesn't allow them to have like the perfect day. So I have worked with professional athletes. I've worked with Olympic athletes. And firsthand, 100%, they do not have perfect lives. Not even close. They deal with all the same shit the rest of us do. They still have things they have to do with money. They still have random stupid chores and errands they have to run. So they still have crap that they have to deal with that gets in the way of their perfect life. So when we think the only way for me to be successful is to be perfect, no one who is ever successful has been perfect, but they're still successful. We don't need to be perfect to be successful. We just need to be better than nothing. I just have to do more than nothing. People who are successful typically did the most above nothing more consistently than everybody else. They didn't do the best they could do. They just did the most above nothing consistently. So if they couldn't do a 10 out of 10 effort, they at least fit in a 6 out of 10. The next day a 7 out of 10, the next day a 4, the next day a 5, next day a 3, next day a 7. Rather than somebody who does 10, 10, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, because one bad thing happened to them. Success does not require perfection. That's a really important thing to remember. Success does not require perfection. I think we're going to say that one more time. Success does not require perfection. There is no one in the world who is successful that has been perfect. Okay? That's very, 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 very helpful to remember. You do not have to be perfect to be successful. You just have to do more than nothing. So as I said to the client was, instead of comparing to what's best, compare to what's worst. Don't try to do like, oh, if I couldn't be best, I might as well not do it. Instead say, well, what's the worst thing that I could do? Let me just not do that. Let me stay above the worst thing ever, and I'll probably be okay. So that's kind of the things we want to focus on. So we wrote some more. We went back and forth. But the main point that I want to get across before I go through instead of going through the rest of this, is for example, our journal page for this client is 84 pages. That's how long our document has been for us, like writing back and forth with each other, is 84 pages. And we started, that's just this year alone. So we do a lot of conversing back and forth. There's a lot of just life talk. And that's often one of the things that holds people back the most. So we've talked about like things such as like self-hate. So we've talked about self-hate, and like whenever he brought that up, like I wrote back like I'd really focus against the feelings of self-hate and instead focus on self-potential. If you learn the habits you have now, and assuming that they're not good ones, which is why the person struggles with self-hate, is you can learn new ones. You now know without any doubt that the current behavior that you're choosing isn't leading to your best life. You know, if you choose the easy things over hard things, if you choose that all or nothing approach all the time, you now know without any doubt that those choices don't lead to the life you want. So stop making them. Now, I know that saying just stop making them sounds like too surface level, but it can be a broad view that you can use for change. Asking, what would I normally do in this moment? But today, in this moment, I'm going to choose differently. Will you make the better choice all of the time? It's unlikely. But you can start making the better choices more often. Yes. So take the feeling of self-hate that you have, and I told him to kind of like encapsulate it. Put it in a clear glass box. This is going to sound really weird, but stay with me. Okay? So take the feeling of self-hate that you have and jam it, shove it into a clear glass box. Why we want to do this is to be able to remember it. In a sense, you want to be able to look in the box. That's why the box has to be glass. Is because you want to be able to look in the box as a reminder of what that felt like. But it's in the box, it's contained. So it's not running rampant, it's not taking over your whole life. You can use it as a remembrance of self-hate, as a way to motivate yourself to make better choices. When you face a tough choice, a choice that the old you wants to make, but the new you is fighting for control, look in that box. Remember what it felt like to make the old you choices. It didn't feel good. You don't want that life. You don't want those feelings. So remember those feelings. Be able to look in the box. And then with the remembrance of those feelings, you can increase your motivation to make new choices. They often won't be fun choices at first. They're going to be very draining on your willpower. So you're going to mess up and make mistakes from time to time. But over time, you'll make the better choices more often. You'll build a life that reflects more self-love, and that box of self-hate, you'll need it less and less. You know you want to start making better choices. You know you want to start making changes. So start. one decision a day. Make one decision a day against what the old you would do. Just one. That's all you need to get started. So when it comes to an all or nothing mindset, you already know that choosing nothing doesn't help you. What you're not yet accepting, or what you don't yet realize is that you don't need all. Success is not dependent on perfection. You don't need to be perfect to be successful. No one who is perfect, I'm sure Jesus is. Here you go. No one who is successful is perfect. There's no one that I've ever met in my entire life, and I've trained, firsthand trained over 3,000 people. No one has been perfect. I've helped people get pro cards in aesthetic sports, and they've made mistakes. I've helped people earn elite totals in powerlifting, and they've made mistakes. I've helped professional athletes and Olympic medalists, and they've made mistakes. I've helped people who we would deem as successful, and they were not perfect. They just showed up every day, and they did something more than nothing. That's it. That's all they did. They showed up every day, and they did something more than nothing every damn day. They improved their more than nothing, got better with efficiency of what they were doing over time. The quality of what they were doing got better and better and better. But they were never perfect. But they also never did nothing. That's the key. Don't compare to what's best, compare to what's worst. And the worst is doing nothing. So just do anything. Doesn't even matter what the hell it is. Just do anything that is not nothing. And you have a chance to be successful. Okay? I wish you the best of luck. If you need any help in your journey and what you're kind of struggling with, always reach out. Our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. I talk to people about this stuff all the time. This is a regular thing. A lot of people struggle with these kind of things. So typically when it looks at nutrition and training, when I help people become successful in health and fitness, very rarely is it that they just have bad information and they just need the information that's right, and then nothing else is ever the problem again. That would be amazing if it worked that way, but it doesn't. They do need better information, that's for sure. So the information was part of the problem. But how do they implement that information into action? How do they make that fit their schedule, their needs, their abilities, their the resources? So when it comes to being what I do has part to do with writing the right information. That's true. But overwhelmingly more is helping people be able to do the right information. And that often includes mindset. So if you're feeling any of these concerns, any of these issues, if you're struggling, you're not alone. It's very, very common. So if you need somebody to talk to, just reach out. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. Okay? Well, if you like today's podcast or podcasts in general, please consider sharing it. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. That's the whole goal with the podcast, is just basically help people live their healthiest and happiest lives. So if this podcast is helping you to any degree, please consider sharing it so we can help other people as well. I appreciate it if you do that. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, people who financially support the podcast. Podcast is well over $1,000 a year. I give an hour to it every day. I really appreciate the financial help. It truly, truly means a lot. It allows us to stay consistent and stay for free. So thank you very much. You can give donations on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. You can do a one-time, monthly, yearly donation, whatever you choose. I appreciate that you choose it. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.